Have you ever met someone in their 80s who said, "I wish I had done things differently"? Imagine reaching that age and realizing the biggest mistakes of your life weren't the things you did, but the things you didn't do. Missed opportunities, words left unsaid, dreams postponed until it was too late. The truth is, most regrets after 80 follow the same patterns, and if you're watching this now, you still have time to avoid them. But will you? Stay with me, because regret number 7 is the most painful of all. Regret is a powerful emotion, and studies show that people nearing the end of their lives overwhelmingly regret the same things. A Harvard study found that emotional regrets, missed connections, unfulfilled dreams, and lost time affect well-being more than financial or career decisions. Another study from Cornell University revealed that 76% of people over 80 wish they had taken more risks, whether in love, health, or personal growth. The saddest part? These regrets are completely avoidable. Right now, your future self is depending on the choices you make today. Every decision, every habit, every moment you let slip away could be shaping the life you'll look back on with either peace or sorrow. But if you know what the most common regrets are, you can take action before it's too late. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for avoiding the biggest mistakes that haunt people after 80, and ensure that when you look back, you'll do it with pride, not regret. One of the biggest regrets people have after 80 is not taking care of their health earlier. It's easy to think that aging and health decline are inevitable, but the truth is, many conditions that limit mobility, energy, and independence in old age are the result of choices made decades before. Studies show that nearly 70% of health problems in seniors, heart disease, diabetes, joint pain, muscle loss, are linked to lifestyle, not genetics. That means that what you do today directly affects the kind of life you'll have in your later years. Will you be the person who moves with ease, still enjoying hobbies, travel, and time with loved ones? Or will you be the one struggling to get out of a chair, relying on medications and wishing you had made different choices? Many people believe that small unhealthy habits don't matter, but ask anyone in their 80s, and they'll tell you otherwise. Take John, for example, an 82-year-old man who spent his life working long hours, eating whatever was convenient, and rarely exercising. "I felt fine in my 50s and 60s, he said. "I thought I had time to start being healthy later." But later never came. By the time he was 75, he had severe arthritis, struggled to walk without pain, and needed daily medications for high blood pressure and diabetes. "I didn't realize how much I had taken my health for granted," he admitted. "Now I'd give anything to go back and take better care of myself." Compare that to Margaret, who made small but consistent health choices throughout her life. She stayed active, ate real food, and managed stress. Now, at 85, she still gardens, walks every day, and has the energy to enjoy time with her grandchildren. The difference? It wasn't luck, it was choices. And the good news is, it's never too late to start. Even small changes today, walking more, cutting back on processed foods, prioritizing sleep, can drastically improve your quality of life in the years to come. Many seniors regret assuming that a pill could fix everything. Modern medicine is incredible, but it can't replace strong muscles, a healthy heart, and a sharp mind. A major study published in The Lancet found that people over 60 who stayed physically active reduced their risk of chronic disease by up to 40%. Yet so many people neglect movement until they lose it. Have you ever met someone who says, "I used to be so active, but now my knees hurt too much"? Often, it's not aging that causes this, it's years of inactivity catching up. Your body is like a machine, it needs to be used, maintained, and fueled properly, or it starts breaking down. If you're watching this and thinking, "I'm already too old to change," let me tell you about Helen. At 78, she struggled with fatigue and joint pain, assuming it was just part of getting older. But when her doctor told her that mild strength training could reverse muscle loss and ease her pain, she decided to try. Within 6 months of light exercises, simple squats, resistance bands, and stretching, she regained strength, improved her balance, and even reduced her need for pain medication. "I never thought I'd feel this good again," she said. "I wish I had started earlier." So ask yourself, are you making choices today that your future self will thank you for? Or are you setting yourself up for the same regrets that so many people have after 80? The best time to start caring for your health was 20 years ago. The second best time? Right now. Because one day, you will be older, looking back on the life you lived. And you'll either be grateful that you made the effort, or wishing that you had. Another major regret people have after 80 is losing touch with friends and family. It happens slowly, life gets busy, work takes over, children grow up, and suddenly, the people who once felt closest drift further away. Many seniors say they never intended to lose those connections, but they assumed there would always be time to reconnect. The problem is, time moves faster than we think, and before you know it, the people who mattered most are no longer there. Ask anyone in their 80s, and they'll tell you, relationships are what truly matter in the end. Yet so many people let them slip away, only realizing too late how much they've lost. Take Robert, an 85-year-old man who spent his younger years focused on building his career. He worked long hours, traveled often, and always told himself he'd spend more time with his family when things settled down. But life never slowed down, and now, in his later years, he sits in a quiet house, wishing he had been there for his kids' big moments, wishing he had called his old friends just to check in. I worked hard to provide for my family, he said, but now I realize they just wanted me, not what I could give them. His voice trembled as he admitted, now my kids have their own busy lives, and I'm the one waiting for their calls. Now, compare that to Susan, 82, who made it a priority to stay connected. Even when life was hectic, she made time for Sunday phone calls with her children, sent handwritten letters to old friends, and planned small get-togethers. Now, in her 80s, she's surrounded by love, her children visit regularly, her lifelong friends still meet for lunch, and she never feels alone. She didn't let the busyness of life take away what truly mattered. She understood that relationships require effort, and now she's reaping the rewards of a life filled with deep connections. Many seniors regret assuming that people will always be there. The truth is, friendships and family bonds require nurturing. If you don't reach out, if you don't make an effort, those relationships can fade. How often have you thought about calling an old friend but got distracted? How many times have you said, we should get together soon, but never actually planned it? Every time you delay, you risk letting that connection slip further away. Loneliness isn't just an emotional burden, it has real consequences. A study from the National Institute on Aging found that social isolation increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, and even dementia. Researchers discovered that seniors with strong social ties live longer, healthier lives, while those who feel lonely are at a significantly higher risk of cognitive decline. The human brain is wired for connection, and when we lose that, our health suffers in ways we never expected. Think about your own life. Are there people you used to be close to but haven't spoken to in years? A sibling, an old friend, a former coworker. What's stopping you from picking up the phone, sending a message, or planning a visit? So many people wait for the other person to reach out first, but what if they're thinking the same thing? What if they're waiting for you? If you're still young enough to change this, do it now. Call your parents, visit your grandparents, reconnect with your old friends. If you're already older, it's never too late to rebuild those bonds. Send that message, make that call, take that first step, because one day, you might regret that you didn't. And by then, it could be too late. Another deep regret many people have after 80 is worrying too much about what others think. It may seem like a small thing, but when you look back on an entire lifetime shaped by the fear of judgment, the weight of this regret can be overwhelming. People spend years, sometimes decades, making choices based on expectations, trying to impress others, avoiding risks out of fear of failure, or suppressing their true selves just to fit in. And then, one day, they wake up in old age and realize they lived a life that wasn't truly their own. Take Helen, for example. In her younger years, she had a deep love for art and dreamed of becoming a painter. But growing up in a practical household, she was told that art wasn't a real career. Wanting to please her parents, she became an accountant instead. She worked diligently, built a stable life, and did everything right. But now, at 83, she sits in a quiet house filled with paintings she only started creating after retirement. I spent my whole life doing what was expected of me, she says. I never asked myself what I actually wanted. Now, she paints every day, but she wonders what could have been if she had followed her passion earlier. Compare that to Richard, who refused to let fear dictate his life. In his 40s, he left a stable but unfulfilling job to pursue his love of woodworking. People told him he was crazy, that it was too risky, but he didn't listen. Decades later, at 86, he still carves, still creates, still wakes up every morning excited about his craft. I never made millions, he says, but I built a life I love. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect, the tendency to believe that others are paying far more attention to our choices than they actually are. But the truth is, most people are too wrapped up in their own worries to scrutinize yours. Studies have shown that people overestimate how much others notice their mistakes or judge their decisions. In reality, most of the fears that stop people from pursuing their dreams or speaking their truth are entirely self-imposed. And yet, so many people let fear control them. They stay in relationships that don't make them happy because they don't want to be judged for leaving. They settle for careers they don't love because they don't want to disappoint their families. They suppress their opinions, their interests, their desires, all to avoid criticism. But at what cost? By the time you reach old age, those opinions you once feared so much won't matter. The people whose approval you sought may not even be around anymore. And the only thing left will be the question, did I live the life I truly wanted? Studies on elderly individuals consistently show that those who live authentically, pursuing their passions, expressing their true selves, and ignoring societal pressures, report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. Those who lived in constant fear of judgment, on the other hand, often feel a deep sense of regret, wishing they had taken more risks, spoken their minds, and lived more boldly. If you're watching this now, ask yourself, how many decisions have you made based on what others might think? How many times have you held yourself back because of fear? If you continue down this path, will you look back at your life with pride, or with regret? The good news is, it's never too late to change. You don't need to quit your job or make a dramatic life shift overnight. But you can start taking small steps toward living authentically. Say what you truly mean. Pursue the hobby you love. Stop worrying about the opinions of people who won't be there in the end. Because when the years pass and the noise fades, the only opinion that will matter is your own. Another painful regret many people have after 80 is not traveling or trying new experiences when they had the chance. At first, it might not seem like a major regret. After all, isn't travel just a luxury? But when you talk to people in their later years, you realize it's not just about vacations, it's about missing out on the richness of life. The memories they never made, the cultures they never experienced, the adventures they kept postponing. And by the time they're ready to go, their health, finances, or circumstances often don't allow it anymore. Take Michael, for example. He always dreamed of visiting Japan. He was fascinated by the culture, the history, the food. But every year, there was an excuse, too busy with work, too expensive, too complicated. Next year, he kept telling himself. But next year turned into decades. Now, at 84, he struggles to walk long distances and has several health conditions that make long-haul flights nearly impossible. I thought I had all the time in the world, he says. I kept putting it off, and now, I'll never see it. Then there's Linda, who had a different approach. She made a promise to herself in her 50s, she would visit a new place every year, even if it was just a small town nearby. She wasn't wealthy, she didn't have endless free time, but she prioritized experiences. Now, at 86, she looks through her photo albums, remembering not just places but moments, the time she watched the sunset in Greece, the time she got lost in a Parisian market, the time she met a kind stranger in Thailand who changed her perspective on life. My body is slowing down, she admits, but my mind is full of stories. And that's what keeps me feeling alive. Many people believe travel is only for the young, but that's not true. The real problem is procrastination, thinking there will always be more time. But the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Not just physically, but also financially. A study found that 78% of retirees who wanted to travel more couldn't afford to because they hadn't planned for it. Another study showed that people in their 80s regret not taking risks and trying new things more than any other missed opportunity. And it's not just about travel. This regret extends to new experiences in general. Learning a new language, picking up a musical instrument, trying a different hobby, so many people postpone these things, thinking, I'm too old, or I don't have time. But here's the reality, time will pass anyway. One day, you'll either look back on a life full of rich experiences, or one full of missed opportunities. Ask yourself, what have you always wanted to do but never made time for? Have you ever dreamed of taking a cooking class, learning to dance, writing a book? Do you catch yourself saying, one day I'll do that, but never actually making it happen? The hard truth is, one day never comes unless you make it happen. And the longer you wait, the more difficult it becomes. Your energy, your finances, your physical abilities, everything changes over time. If you wait for the perfect moment, you may end up waiting forever. But here's the good news, it's never too late to start. You don't have to book a world tour or make drastic changes overnight. Start small. Take a weekend trip to a place you've never been. Sign up for that class you've been curious about. Try something new, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. The more you step outside your routine, the more alive you'll feel. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the trips you took, the hobbies you tried, the experiences you embraced. You'll only regret the ones you never made time for. And right now, you still have the chance to change that. One of the most heartbreaking regrets people have after 80 is holding on to grudges and not forgiving sooner. At first, it might seem like a small thing. After all, why should you forgive someone who hurt you? But talk to people in their later years, and you'll hear the same painful realization. Carrying resentment for decades only steals your own happiness. The person you refuse to forgive, they moved on. But you carried the weight of that anger, that bitterness, that hurt, sometimes for a lifetime. And one day, you wake up and realize you wasted years being angry at someone who isn't even thinking about you. Take Margaret, for example. She and her sister had a falling out over an inheritance dispute when they were in their 50s. At the time, it seemed impossible to forgive, too many harsh words, too much pride. So they stopped talking. Years passed, then decades. At first, I told myself I didn't care, Margaret admits. But every holiday, every birthday, I thought about her. And still, I did nothing. Then, one day, she got the phone call. Her sister had passed away. No time to fix things. No time to say, I'm sorry. No time to say, I love you. And suddenly, all those years of silence felt so small compared to the pain of never getting a second chance. Now compare that to David, who also had a falling out with his best friend in his 40s. They didn't speak for years, both too stubborn to reach out first. But when David turned 70, he realized something. Why am I wasting the time I have left being angry? So, he picked up the phone. The conversation was awkward at first, but then came laughter, then tears. I can't believe we wasted so much time, his friend said. Now, at 85, David still has his best friend in his life, all because he let go of pride and chose forgiveness. Studies have shown that unforgiveness is linked to higher stress, increased risk of heart disease, and even cognitive decline. When you hold on to resentment, your body stays in a state of stress, your cortisol levels stay high, your blood pressure rises, and over time, this damages your health. Meanwhile, research from Harvard found that people who practice forgiveness live longer, healthier lives and experience greater peace of mind. But here's the most shocking part, most people don't realize the depth of their regret until it's too late. They assume they have time. They assume they'll forgive someday. But what if someday never comes? What if you wake up one day and the person you were angry at is gone? What if you realize you spent years punishing yourself, not them? If you're watching this right now, ask yourself, is there someone in your life you need to forgive? A parent who made mistakes? A sibling you lost touch with? A friend who hurt you? And more importantly, is holding on to this anger worth the regret you'll feel later? Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing what happened. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over pain. It means saying, I won't let this control my heart anymore. It means freeing yourself. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the times you forgave. You'll only regret the times you didn't. And right now, while you still can, you have a choice. One of the most devastating regrets people have after 80 is not saving enough money for retirement. At first, financial planning might seem like just another responsibility, something you'll figure out later. But later comes faster than you think. Many people spend their younger years assuming they'll always have time to save, always have enough income, always be able to work if needed. And then, suddenly, they're in their 70s or 80s, looking at a bank account that won't last, bills that keep coming, and the terrifying realization that they have no financial safety net. Take George, for example. He worked hard his whole life, raised a family, and lived comfortably. But he never seriously thought about long-term savings. I always thought I'd have my pension, he said. I thought Social Security would be enough. But as the years passed, inflation rose, medical bills piled up, and his pension didn't stretch as far as he had expected. Now, at 83, he struggles every month to cover basic expenses. He never imagined he'd be cutting back on groceries, skipping medications because they're too expensive, or feeling trapped in a financial situation he can't escape. I thought I had time, he says quietly. But time ran out. Now, compare that to Eleanor. She never made a huge salary, but she started saving early. She put a little aside each month, invested wisely, and lived within her means. Now, at 85, she isn't wealthy, but she's financially secure. She can afford her medical care, she can take small trips to visit her grandchildren, and she never has to worry about how she'll pay her bills. The best decision I ever made was planning ahead, she says. Because now, I can enjoy my life without fear. The truth is, money problems in old age aren't just about stress, they're about survival. Studies show that financial insecurity in retirement leads to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and even physical health problems. The American Journal of Public Health found that seniors who struggle financially are significantly more likely to experience chronic illnesses, cognitive decline, and early mortality. Money affects everything: your health, your freedom, your ability to make choices. And yet, so many people ignore it. They assume they'll figure it out later. They convince themselves that their expenses will go down when they retire. But the reality is, medical bills increase, cost of living rises, and unexpected expenses never stop. And the older you get, the fewer options you have to fix financial mistakes. Ask yourself, if you stopped working today, how long could you sustain your current lifestyle? Do you have a plan for emergencies? Will you be financially independent in old age, or will you be forced to rely on others? The good news? It's never too late to start. Whether you're in your 30s, 50s, or even 70s, every effort you make toward financial security matters. Start by tracking your expenses, cutting unnecessary costs, and setting aside even a small amount each month. If you have investments, learn how to manage them wisely. If you're younger, start now, because the biggest financial regret people have isn't the money they spent, but the money they didn't save. Because at the end of your life, you don't want to look back and wish you had been smarter with money. You want to enjoy your later years with freedom, dignity, and peace of mind. And the choices you make today will determine whether that happens. One of the most heartbreaking regrets people have after 80 is not saying "I love you" more often. It seems so simple, so obvious, yet it's one of the most common regrets among the elderly. Not expressing love, not showing appreciation, not making the people who mattered most feel valued, these are the things that haunt people in their later years. Because once time runs out, you can't go back and say the words you should have said. You can't rewrite the moments you let slip away. Take Henry, for example. He was a quiet man, not one for emotional conversations. He loved his wife, his children, his friends, but he assumed they knew that. He never felt the need to say it out loud. They understand, he would think. They know how I feel. But after his wife passed, and later, when he found himself alone in his 80s, he realized something painful. I wish I had told her more, he said, voice trembling. I wish I had told my kids how proud I was of them, how much I loved them. I thought they knew, but now I wonder, did they? Compare that to Maria, an 84-year-old woman who never let a day go by without making sure the people in her life felt loved. She wrote letters, left voice messages, hugged her grandchildren every time she saw them. I didn't want to reach the end and wonder if I had said enough, she explained. Now, even though she has lost people along the way, she carries no regrets. They knew. I made sure they knew. A study from Harvard found that the quality of our relationships is the single greatest predictor of happiness and longevity. Not wealth, not achievements, just the strength of our connections with others. And yet, so many people take those connections for granted. They assume they'll always have more time. They let little conflicts, misunderstandings, or simply the busyness of life keep them from expressing how they truly feel. And then one day, they wake up, and the chance is gone. The person they love has moved away, grown distant, or worse, left this world entirely. And they're left with nothing but the ache of words unspoken. Ask yourself, if someone you love was gone tomorrow, would they know how much they meant to you? When was the last time you told your parents, your children, your closest friends how much you appreciate them? How often do you assume they just know? The truth is, no one ever regrets saying, "I love you," too much. No one looks back at their life and wishes they had been less affectionate, less expressive, less grateful. But millions of people look back and wish they had said it just one more time. You still have time. Time to pick up the phone, to send a message, to hold someone's hand and say the words you've been holding back. Because in the end, it's not the money, the accomplishments, or the possessions that matter. It's the love we share, the people we cherish, and the moments we take to remind them just how much they mean to us. Don't let this be your regret. Say it now. While you still can. Imagine yourself at 85, sitting in a quiet room, looking back on your life. The laughter, the choices, the moments that shaped you, all of it replaying like an old film in your mind. But instead of warmth, you feel a knot in your chest. Because mixed in with the good memories are the what-ifs, the if-onlys, the I wish I hads. You see the faces of people you loved but never told enough. You remember the places you wanted to visit but never did. You feel the weight of all the things you postponed, thinking there would always be more time. But there isn't. This is the reality for so many people. They wake up one day and realize they waited too long to live, to love, to take risks, to forgive, to say what mattered. And the cruelest part? Life doesn't give us a warning before it takes away our chances. One day, the doors that were once open slowly start to close. The body that once moved with ease begins to slow. The people we thought would always be there start to disappear. And suddenly, we're left with nothing but time to wonder why we didn't do things differently. Think about your own life right now. Are you truly living it the way you want? Or are you putting things off, letting fear, pride, or routine dictate your days? If you knew that right now was your last chance to change something, to say something, to do something, would you still wait? Because the truth is, one day you will be in that chair, looking back. And when that moment comes, you won't regret the things you tried, the love you gave, the moments you seized. You'll only regret the things you were too afraid to do. But you still have time. Right now, in this moment, you have the chance to rewrite the story of your life. What will you do with it? At the end of your life, the only thing that will truly matter is how fully you lived. Not the money, not the possessions, but the moments, the choices, the love you shared. Regret is a heavy burden, but the good news is, you still have time to change your story. You can start today. Call that person. Take that trip. Say, "I love you" more. Let go of what doesn't serve you. Because the worst regret isn't failure, it's never trying at all. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these regrets hit you the hardest? What's one thing you're going to change starting today? Let me know in the comments. And if this video spoke to you, subscribe, because life is too short to live with regrets, and together, we can make the years ahead the best ones yet.